Welcome back. The April jobs numbers were released earlier today, and the reaction from many has been pleasant surprise. Unemployment is down, hiring is up, and to add to the good news, the payroll numbers from February and March were also revised in an upward direction. However, a peek behind those highlights show that there are a few lowlights as well, and those numbers may have more important implications for the economy. Joining me for tonight's Q&A is economist Dan Mitchell, who's a senior fellow at the Cato Institute and a Forbes contributor. Dan, welcome back.
Hey, Amy, how are you?
Very well on this nice Friday. It's beautiful weather outside, actually. So these unemployment numbers, 7.5%. This is a new all-time low in the last 4 years. Tell us the good news first.
The good news, as you said, the unemployment rate is down to 7.5%. We are seeing private sector job creation, not robust, nothing to pop open the champagne, but it's still positive movement. And perhaps the best news of all, this is, in effect, a tribute and a victory to gridlock, because ever since the 2010 midterm elections, the unemployment rate has come down by 2 percentage points, probably in part because we've reduced the burden of government spending from more than 24% of GDP down to somewhere between 22 and 22.5% of GDP. So I think these numbers show that if we can simply sort of tamp down the burden of government, we can finally get the economy back on its feet.
All right, so that's some of the good news, but there's some bad news too. Dan, tell us about that.
Well, 7.5% unemployment, that's progress, but it's still 2 percentage points higher than what the Obama administration claimed where we would be if we had passed the so-called stimulus. And if you look a little bit deeper into those numbers, the employment population ratio, which actually measures how many people are working out of the working age population, we're still stuck down around 58.6%, which is way below the 63% average that we had before the Obama administration. So if the unemployment rate is falling, but it's only falling because people are dropping out of the labor market, or primarily, to be fair, that's really not a big endorsement of what this White House has been doing.
So, Dan, help us understand how the hike in the payroll tax and that hike in that upper income tax bracket has possibly affected this jobs outlook. Because a lot of conservatives said, look, you know, you're expanding the burden that private citizens are bearing financially and from government. But you say, like, that would seem to be a cross current of what you said earlier, that we have this gridlock that might be helping these numbers.
Everything's all about, balancing. On the positive side, government spending, at least in terms of its share of GDP, has come down. That's a positive. On the other hand, we did have the payroll tax rate increase. We had the class warfare tax increase, and those are on the other sides of the scale. But considering where we were a couple of years ago, like let's say 2.5, 3 years ago, when Obama was doing Dodd-Frank, he was doing Obamacare, he was doing the fake stimulus and all those things, there's no question the policy environment today is better. Even if all we have is gridlock, that's not a bad outcome, because that's in effect what our founding fathers wanted. They saw gridlock as a way of protecting people, because politicians would be too busy fighting each other rather than doing things to threaten the economy. So, Dan, you mentioned the labor force participation rate, being very low, not good news there. And also the underemployment rate is at 13.9%. These are folks who are not working to their fullest capacity, people who want a full-time job but can't get the hours. My question to you is, do you expect that rate to exacerbate as Obama kicks in and employers cut down on hours so that they don't have to comply with these expensive health care mandates? We were just talking about the scale, good things and bad things on different sides. There's no question that Obamacare is a big negative sitting on one side of the scale. And we're seeing a lot of companies, just to try to survive, trying to push employees under what is, I think, the 30-hour requirement before you're forced to participate in Obamacare. And there's no question that you're going to see a lot of costs for small businesses and other businesses rise as well. So that's clearly a big negative weight on the economy. And in a good world, in an ideal world, we would somehow figure out some way to repeal that law and instead implement some pro-market policies that would sort of sever this ridiculous link the government created back in World War II between your job and your health insurance, which doesn't really make sense, but it's because of government.
All right, Dan, I look forward to arriving in that ideal world with you. Thank you for joining us on Friday. We appreciate it.